Hey guys and girls, so I'm very excited to share with you today my first collaboration. I met up with one of our local gamers in order to make this video. However, before we get to the actual footage, just a short public service announcement, if you will. Now, the fact that we were able to get an RTX 2080 Ti working again in this fashion is so awesome. I'm so excited for you guys to see this. However, the video is more about the actual baking process itself. So the footage is quite long, it's largely unedited, and it does really go into depth. So just something for you to keep in mind as you go through this. I really hope you guys and girls enjoy watching this as much as we did making it. One other thing that I do need to mention is that there is a bit of a debate as to whether baking electronic goods in the same oven where you cook your food is safe. So I am going to say that if you follow any of the steps in this video, you do so 100% at your own risk. Public service announcement aside, let's get to the good stuff. Hey everybody, I hope you're doing very well. So we're going to be doing something a little bit different today. I'm sitting with a RTX 2080 Ti at the moment, which artifacts randomly when in heavy use. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to pop it in the oven. Unfortunately, I'm not very good in the kitchen. So I'm joined today by Adam Smarouge. He is the local GPU baking expert, and he's going to be sharing some of his skills with us, and hopefully we can see if we can get the 2080 Ti back to a working condition. So let's get started.
Good, let's do it.
Okay, so this is the card in question. This is the a pallet 2080 Ti, pretty beefy cooler. So yeah, you can go ahead. So while we're working, I'm going to ask you a few questions. How long have you been doing this for? How long has it been since you popped your first GPU into the oven?
So probably my first GPU in the oven was back in the 880 GT days. I got one for super cheap. I think I got it for like 500 bucks, and at the time that card was top of the line. And it was also doing the same thing, artifacting, and I got it for really cheap. And I wanted to see what I could do with it, see if I couldn't try fix it or microsolder or something. And then the popular advice on the internet was just toss it in the oven. And at the time for me, it was like such odd advice. I was like, there's no way that's real. So I got the card for 500 bucks, super cheap at the time. At the time, I think it was going for like 6 or 7 grand, something like that.
Sure.
So I got it for 500 and I popped it in the oven 11 minutes, 195 degrees, which is what we're gonna do today as well. And yeah, it worked. And that card actually powered my gaming rig for about 5 years afterwards. Yeah, it actually powered my gaming rig for about 5 years afterwards after baking it, and I never had any artifacting, never had any issues on it whatsoever.
That's pretty awesome.
So that was pretty cool, and that kind of got me convinced on the idea. For a while, actually, I was unemployed when I was overseas, and what I used to do is I used to actually make quite a bit of money buying broken graphics cards off eBay in Europe, and just baking them back to life and reselling them for a bit of profit. So that was quite interesting as well, and it seems to work not just with older versions of cards, but also with the newer stuff. I mean, solder is solder, right? It's all the same.
Yeah.
So it seems to work quite reliably. And there we go, we've set it free. It's free.
Cool, man.
So we just got to take these thermal pads off. I'm actually quite happy that most of those pads stayed on as they are.
Yeah, makes it easier to reapply later.
Exactly, these things are a pain in the ass. Where did these come from? Sometimes you just get lost, eh? Do you reckon they come on here? It looks, yeah, it is actually, that's where it goes. Just here. Cool, these VRMs get their own heat pipes. Okay. Lucky.
So if you, off the top of your head, if you had to guess, how many GPUs have you baked in your lifetime?
Well, probably like 100, 150, something like that. And the success rate, I'd say, is about 85%.
That's actually pretty good.
And the 15% is usually because I made a mistake. I messed up something. Like the one time I was actually trying to bake a laptop motherboard, and what happened is I forgot to take, you got to take all the stickers off. Like I'm seeing stickers here, there's stickers on the back, and you got to take all of that off, because one time with the laptop motherboard, what happened is there was a sticker on it, and I was lazy, so I didn't take it off. And there were little resistors under the sticker, stacked under the sticker. So obviously when the oven heated up, the stickers were stuck to the resistor, and the solder melted, so the sticker warped because of the heat, and it pulled like 15 resistors just off the board.
Ouch.
I can't micro solder, I don't have the machinery, so the laptop board was ruined. I just cut my losses and bought a new one eventually. It was a bit disappointing, it was very painful. But
you aren't an IT guy if you haven't taken a shortcut somewhere that's broken something.
That's also true. That's also very, very true. But in the meanwhile, now we're just gonna clean the board. We're just gonna take the thermal paste off.
Okay.
Just kind of scrub it down, give it a clean. Because maybe it's something else. It might not necessarily, but I highly suspect it's probably one of these RAM chips here that have a damaged solder joint under them.
Okay. So basically, what you do is you remove the heatsink and you remove any stickers on the PCB. Is that about
Stickers. We're gonna take the thermal paste off now. Even these orange stickers here, we're gonna try take off. We're gonna actually leave the back plate on.
Okay.
Because it kind of gives a bit of stability when the board's on the pan.
Okay.
Ideally, you would also take off all these plastic mountings. They can potentially melt, but we're not going in the oven for that long, so we should actually be okay. I wouldn't worry too much about them right now.
So you said 11 minutes, 195 degrees. Is that pretty much the same for any GPU you work with? Or?
Yeah, 100%. So that's, look at it, sometimes depends on the solder, but generally that solder will melt or start to soften. Because what happens is that there are little pits basically under the GPU. Each solder connection has basically like a cup and a cup on the GPU. And the machine drops like a little ball of solder in there. And then when they heat it, it should hypothetically melt the solder and kind of lock them together like this with solder in the middle.
Okay.
But what sometimes happens is that around that ball, on that joint, there's like a level of oxidation or rust or whatever, and that stops the connection from going through. So technically it has contact, but just because of the rust or oxidation, it stops it from coming together. So the heat basically reflows the solder. It's basically, it's a very garage shop kind of way of reflowing solder on a card like this.
Okay.
It's not ideal, of course. I would like a reflow oven, but we're just going to use a normal oven today.
Cool, man. Does the thermal paste have to be like 100% removed before you can work with it? Or?
Yeah, generally you try to get as much as you can off. I'll probably get some Q-tips on this later as well.
Yeah.
The thing is, it can cause problems. It can just cause problems, particularly like, look, basically over the entire board the solder is going to melt now, right? Okay. So everything is going to get kind of reflowed. Okay. So if there's thermal paste around the transistor or something, and again, you know, it's the same thing like with the rust. If the solder melts and the thermal paste is now hot, so it's going to be a little bit more fluid than it is now, and it gets under that, then again you have a broken card, you know, for a different issue.
Okay, makes sense.
So you generally do have to get all of it, yeah. And this is actually kind of sticky work because these transistors are so tiny, it's so easy to break them. They're probably not even transistors. Probably not even using the correct terminology. The things, the diodes, the things.
Yeah, this is the crappy part of the job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like if I'm doing just like a normal heatsink, just replacing a normal thermal paste, generally I'll just clean the GPU itself.
Yes.
Like I'm not gonna spend too much time cleaning in between, but obviously since we're going into the oven, it's a bit different.
I should probably get a toothbrush. Let me get a toothbrush. That's actually working really well.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. I've never even thought of that.
Yeah, toothbrushes are honestly almost indispensable when it comes to refurbing stuff.
Okay.
Toothbrushes and dish soap and what is it? Acetone and all. Not acetone, the other one. Similar.
I've had to do this once where I had a GPU where the dirt was caked on so badly that you're not sure where the GPU ends and the
yes.
begins.
That and also computers that have come from smokers' houses. That is the worst. That is like a sludge. You just find like jungle creatures living in there. Honestly, I think that is almost as, yeah, it's almost as good as we're gonna get. Cool.
There's a little bit like just on the side of the.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Is that gonna make a difference as
No,
well?
that should be alright. I'm just more concerned about around the transistors because they will lift.
Okay, cool.
Okay, let's see what happens. Nice thing is that these boards, none of these boards use the, what is it? It's high technology procedure going on right here. It's very, very high-end procedure. The nice thing is that these boards, the new boards, don't use the liquid caps.
Okay.
They're using full solid caps, which is nice. So these caps, because the liquid ones would pop under temperature. Now we're gonna do two things. We're gonna take the stickers off. You just gotta check before you push the sticker that there's no traces underneath where you're pushing.
Okay.
Because if you push a trace and you cut the trace, then you kind of defeat the whole point. So we're gonna try pull this off gently. I mean, the whole point is that we're trying to fix this card now, not break it more.
Yeah. Hopefully what we'll end up doing.
Yeah, it should actually. If it's the RAM issue, like, of course we haven't done any extremely extensive diagnostics on this because we just don't have the equipment, I guess.
Yeah.
But some of these guys overseas, particularly the overclockers, my God, they can point out anything that's wrong.
Okay.
They can, you know, they because they basically have all the hardware schematics and everything, so they just dive very deep into the hardware. Look at that, it's a sticker under a sticker. It's also some sci-fi stuff. Now, you don't really have to get everything off with these, just as long as there's nothing under the sticker.
Okay.
Just as long as there's nothing, no obvious components. Like, it's not going to pull the traces off the board or something.
Okay.
Let's take that one off. Let's try to take this one off.
So when doing something like this, what is the biggest challenge that you generally face with?
The biggest challenge. The biggest challenge is honestly not knowing really the condition of the hardware and trying to make sure that nothing gets too burned or falls off the board or stuff like that. That's always a problem because that's always a risk. Like generally, like it shouldn't really reduce the lifespan of your card because it is essentially just reflowing the solder joint. Also, none of the hardware has live power coming through it. Right? So generally when there's no hardware coming through components, you get a lot higher temperature margins that you can work with before something gets damaged. Like if a chip goes up to 150 degrees because of internal voltage, then generally it might be damaged, right? Yeah. You're running the risk of damaging something. But if it's external heat, it can probably take up to 300-400 degrees without getting too damaged.
Okay.
Because there's no chance of burning, shall we say, the actual circuitry.
So there's the chances of actually like breaking your GPU by putting it in the oven is actually pretty low.
The electronic components, yeah.
Okay.
The electronic components, yeah, you probably won't break them per se. But there's always a chance that something else happens. Like I'm looking at these now, and if we have the board mounted upside down and these are heavy enough and they get desoldered enough, then they'll fall off the board. And that would be not great, and then that's a solder job we have to do.
Okay.
The rest of these small things generally should be fine, but you also never know, right? You never know the condition of the solder. You never know exactly what solder they use. We probably should be doing that kind of research, but I'm not gonna. Is there anything interesting under here? Not really. Honestly, these stickers are more of a pain in the ass to get off, so I think we're going to leave these on.
Okay.
I can't feel any components under there. There's a couple pads here on the edge, but there's not.
Okay.
It's not really going to pull anything, I don't think. No, there's nothing under there. He says now. No, but if you look here, there's nothing.
Okay.
So I guess this just carries on. I don't feel anything under it. So we're going to leave those stickers on.
Okay.
We're just going to do a quick... Okay, these ones we might have to... Let's see what they do. This one is suspicious. This one has some components nearby, so we're going to have to take this one off. It takes long to do this kind of stuff. Oh, luckily this one's friendly. It's a friendly sticker. Now what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take also these rubber insulators off.
Okay.
So let's see how they go.
Is it the same problem with the paper where if they change, they deform and they'll rip off some of the other stuff?
Yeah, possibly, and also they just warp and they just melt. And you actually want them on the board still. They basically insulate the heat or isolate the heat sink to some extent from the rest of the traces on the board. And if they get in the oven, these things tend to warp very quickly, so you actually don't want to put them in the oven. Always start from the inside first. It's so much easier than scraping at the board. You just can pop them off like that. There's also some weird stuff going on the board here. There's some odd corrosion. Okay. And if you look, I don't know if the phone will see it, but if you look here on the side, that piece is actually quite rusted.
Yeah, I can see it.
So I don't know what's up with that. That doesn't look right. So it might also be something else.
I know the GPU was water cooled at one point.
Ooh, maybe you had a leak.
Yeah.
Maybe there was a bit of a leak. Cause I see some kind of weird residue on this side of the board.
Okay.
No, we can always just grab some acetone and deal with it. But if the hardware is damaged, then that's not going to help. It's more for any kind of surface residue. Okay, so now we're very close to the baking part of this. So we've just basically cleaned the PCB. We took off all the thermal paste, took off all these little rubber washers, I guess. There's a couple stickers here. I think those will probably melt off, but I don't really, I'm being lazy. No, they'll probably stay on, but let's see what happens. Okay. They're not really going to be a problem because they don't have any components next to them. If they do melt, we just take them off with tweezers later. Otherwise, I think we got everything. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to quickly check how the board sits on the tray. So always what happens, these little standoffs is hold one side higher.
Yeah.
So we're going to make little standoffs out of aluminum foil.
Okay.
So what you do is you just make like a little tadpole shape and you put them through here and you kind of press it in and clip it. Make sure you don't have any components around that, but that just kind of gives it a little bit of distance off the metal so it doesn't sit directly on the tray. And we're going to do that for each of the corners, and for the other corner we're going to use quite a big ball of foil just to give it balance so it sits flat. You don't want it rocking around on the board really.
Okay.
Just kind of clip it around like that, and you do this. And make a big ball of foil.
Yes,
actually flip it around like this.
At the end of the video, I owe you some foil and a new toothbrush.
Yes. Yes. Luckily, it wasn't my toothbrush. It was my girlfriend's. Yeah, so that seems pretty solid. It's not
so
really...
what are the dangers of the PCB moving around when it's in the oven?
Now it's not going to move around. It should be fine. You got to be super careful when you're pulling it back out of the oven, though. You really got to be careful so you don't pull it out too quickly.
Okay.
Because if you pull it out too quickly and you shift the board or something, chances are you shake something loose or whatever. You know, it can always happen. Okay. You never know. So just care. Take it easy. Okay, I think it's time to pop this baby in the heat.
Remember to salt and season to taste.
Yes, a little bit of salt. I'll get the salt, I'll get the pepper, get the Tabasco. So we're just gonna pop it in like that. We've got the oven at 195 degrees. I need to start my stopwatch right now. And since I didn't start the stopwatch yet, we're gonna put it for exactly 11 minutes. Normally you put it for 11:30, but we're gonna put it for 11.
11:30. That's a very precise number.
11 minutes 30 seconds. That's what I sort of found works the best. You can do it for 13 minutes or 8 minutes. 8 minutes won't melt the solder, and 13, 15 minutes you stand a chance of actually melting the PCB itself, the actual board.
Okay.
And that's going to lead to many problems. Cool. Let's see what happens. Let's give it a wait. All right, folks, we've hit the time. We're going to switch the oven off. You don't want to give it a rush of air too quickly, so just open it a bit slowly. Oven's off.
Toasty.
Very toasty. Smells like my granny's cooking.
That does not sound like a compliment.
We're gonna very slowly take this out. Also, pro tip: give yourself a little bit of extra material to work with when you're handling the thing. You don't want to drop the tray because it's hot. And give me some space. I'm going to very gently slide this here. And we're going to leave it there. Check the discoloration on the fan connectors.
Oh yeah.
So that's what happens, yeah. It smells weird. It smells almost like... I actually don't know. Something like a fruit. Some kind of fruit, like a foreign fruit or something. I don't know, it's weird. But you can see the solder's melting there. It's all nice and shiny.
Okay.
And okay, it's a bit yellow now, the bit of the flux has come to the surface. But from this side, nothing looks damaged, not that I see. We heard a little bit of a clank earlier, so we will have to move it at some point and see if something didn't fall off on the other side. But the most important part right now is to not touch it at all for about 20 minutes.
By the way, if you guys are wondering what the noise in the background is, it's the coffee machine.
We're making coffee, we need coffee, it's very intense work, okay? Yeah, I think we're good.
So you could then probably, when you switch off the oven, just leave it in the oven for a while to cool down?
Well, the thing is the oven is still hot.
Okay.
So you don't actually want to go too crazy on the solder. Once you're done with your 11 minutes, you're done.
Okay,
Try
cool.
to take it out as quick as possible.
Makes sense.
And also when you're baking it, just kind of have a feel on it. If you hear popping and crackling and all that, you've probably gone a bit too far. So anywhere between 9.5 and 12 minutes, you should probably get right there.
Okay.
Just play it by ear, but it also comes with experience. You need to destroy a few cards to find out.
Indeed.
Alright folks, so we out of the oven, and yeah, there's a bit of discoloration there. Some of the flux has come to the surface here. The stickers are a bit brown. Those ones stayed on. I knew they would stay on. They have that crazy glue on them. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna quickly look on the other side, because I heard a bit of a thunk earlier, and let's see if anything fell off. The card's cooled off a bit. It's been out here for about 15 minutes, so I can touch it safely. Yay! There's nothing. Everything looks like it's still pretty much on board. No pun intended. So we're just gonna let it cool off a little bit more. Then maybe we run over it once more with the toothbrush just to clean off some of the gunk. And then we're gonna eventually strap the cooler back on and see what happens.
When using the toothbrush to do this kind of work, you obviously don't want to be too heavy.
Yeah, that's true, but this toothbrush is also ancient, so it's not really that rough. But you generally won't knock stuff off the board with a brush. It holds pretty tight. What can happen is sometimes the bristles get stuck under something, and then you try to pull it, and that's when you pop something off.
Okay.
So if it gets stuck or something, just don't freak out. Just try, slowly untangle it or whatever. You know what? I think we're good.
So is that it? Are we done?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Cool.
We're pretty much ready to slap the heatsink back on.
Before we get to the results of the baking, I just very quickly wanted to share with you some of the problems that I was experiencing with this card. I do apologize for the poor video quality. I had to pull these video clips from WhatsApp. For those of you who don't know WhatsApp, it is a messaging app, but it greatly reduces the visual quality of your media. So I do apologize for that. But basically what was happening is that as soon as the card was placed under any kind of stress, whether it be benchmark-wise or gaming-wise, it would crash very quickly, normally within the first 30 seconds, and then I would be back on the desktop. And sometimes it would also just randomly crash on the desktop as well. At one point after a crash, even resetting the entire system 3-4 times in a row would not recover the display. The screen stayed black. So what I did was once I eventually did make it back onto the desktop, I attempted to reinstall the drivers, which is what we are having a look at now. But as you can see, even though I got the notification that the driver installation was completed successfully, the aspect ratio of the screen still looked like a card that had no GPU drivers installed. And then also at one point, I had very severe artifacting on the display, which is what we will see in the next very short clip. And this is what led me to attempting to bake the card in order to fix the problem. Here is a view of the card running in the system. Now, by the time you see this portion of the video, I have been using this card after baking for more than a month. My life has just been that crazy that I just have not been able to finish editing this video. And there also we can see in Device Manager the RTX 2080 Ti. And if I give you a good look at the screen, then you will see that the aspect ratio is now 100% correct. For the first 3 days after baking of the card had been completed, I tested it very extensively. And when I say very extensively, that is exactly what I mean. I had numerous runs of 3D Mark benchmarking. I used the 3D Mark stress testing utility, normally overnight for between 7 to 9 hours straight while I was asleep. I also used the OCCT utility. I tested the GPU stability. I tested benchmarking results, gaming results. I tested temperature. I tested clock speeds. I tested VRAM and the VRAM stability as well. And for more than a month, basically since the day this card was baked, I have had not a single crash, a single error, or a single blue screen. Here where you see 0 results and as well as not pass results is where I eventually started overclocking the card in order to really try and bring it to its knees. And I even managed to achieve a overclock of plus 200 on the core and 1000 on the memory, which I just think is so awesome. And as I've said, absolutely 100% rock solid stable. So guys and girls, there you have it, a potentially devastating loss turned into a big win. Now this would have been pretty amazing at the best of times, but considering the current state of the GPU market, this really is nothing short of miraculous. An RTX 2080 Ti gotten back to 100% stable and working condition by popping it into the oven. I do have to mention this just one last time. If you do follow any of the steps in this video, you do so 100% at your own risk. Thanks for watching, guys and girls. Also a very big thank you to Adam Smarouge for joining us and for giving so generously of his time. I do hope to do more collaborations in the future. If you do have any ideas or suggestions, comments, please make sure to leave them down below. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.